Hi, everyone. Welcome to Radiant Living, Inspiring Humanity to Thrive. I'm your host, Marisa B, and today I have with me Franc Palaia. He's a multi-disciplinary artist, musician, lecturer, educator, curator. He is listed in Who's Who in American Art. Franc, thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you, Marissa. Nice to be with you.
I'm thrilled to have you here. I wanted to talk a little bit. Well, so first of all, the body of your work is incredible. That's the first thing I have to say.
Thank
And
you.
we're going back to, I should have even said documentarian, because you actually documented Hambledon's work, right, in the early 80s.
Yeah, well, I've been documenting for 40, 50 years, actually, since I started photography. I do a lot of kind of artistic photography, but I love the fact that I could document things that were happening in real time. And it's great because now, decades later, all these photographs that I've taken over the years are now valuable art historical artifacts.
Yes, and I think you wrote a book also, correct? From the time that you had done that documenting of his work, of his artwork. I should say that it's Richard Hambledon, right?
Yeah,
That was his
Richard
name, Richard
Hamilton, right.
Hambledon.
From the
Yes,
early 80s, yeah, in New
80s.
York
Right.
City.
Right. And the reason why I wanted to have you on is because it's everything evolves, and everything evolves, and yet everything touches each other. Working to document Hamilton's work, which he worked, I know it was of the times, let's say the late 1970s, early 1980s, and he did the Shadow Man work. I know he did other work, but Shadow Man was primarily what he was known for, because he was going around putting it in New York City. And you were documenting all these works before they would, I'm assuming it was the authorities that were painting over everything at the time. Um,
Well,
but it's a pictograph, right? It's a pictograph, and then you work in pictograph as well as one of your disciplines, correct? Because you recently did something in England. Can you explain a little bit to the audience, first of all, how you got started in art? Let's do that, because it's such a long career.
well, yes. um, I'm not a 22-year-old kid, that's for sure. But anyway, yes. So going way back, my inspiration, well, I always wanted to be an artist since I was literally 5 years old, and always did art through school. I was and ended up being like the best artist all through school, and that kept encouraging me to keep going. But when I was an adult, I was inspired by the cave painters, as I was amazed and totally impressed on what they did 40, 50,000 years ago, before language, before there was even a concept of art. They invented it. They invented art. They invented murals, which is what I do now, a lot of. They even invented stencils and spray paint, believe it or not.
Yes. Yes.
So anyway,
Which
so
is
that was
odd,
an
right? You would
early,
think spray paint, right? Spray
well,
paint is
but
something
not
that
the
you would
way
never
we know
think,
it.
but no, but they still
Right.
sprayed paint. Yes.
Right. They ground up pigments, put it powdered in their mouth, and blew through a reed. So basically, it was like a puff of pigment. They would put their hands up, and their hands would show up. So that's a
Yes.
stencil, and then blowing the pigment, that's spray paint.
Mm-hmm.
So they were always in the back of my mind as amazing phenomenon in history, because that was the day, the first cave painting, that was the day that separated human beings from every other animal or plant on the planet. That's what makes us different. We purposely make marks. I mean, other animals make marks, but by accident, or just digging a hole, or or something. But we were specific, and not only did they paint, but they were so good at it. And they, where did they learn how to do this? And so anyway, moving ahead a little bit. So I started making walls in graduate school. I was graduate school in the 70s, and I started fabricating simulated cave paintings. And so I used to do them on canvas, square, rectangular canvases. The surfaces were very, very realistic and authentic looking, but that I didn't like that square edge. So I was trying to think, what could I use that I could actually make the whole thing look like a cave? And I grew up in New Jersey on the beach in Long Branch, and so I
Okay.
was a beachcomber. I would always walk
Mhm.
up and down the beach, winter and summer. And one day, a piece of styrofoam hit me in the leg, and it was a little chunk of styrofoam, and a light bulb went off, really, like literally above my head. That's it. That's what I need to use to make my cave paintings look more realistic. So I started using styrofoam, and sure enough, and I haven't stopped in 45 years. In fact, today I just finished a couple of new pieces using the styrofoam. So it's just perfect for what I'm trying to do.
Yes.
But I like the challenge to make something look so realistic that it just fills your eye. To me, that's the magic of being an artist,
And I have to say, I've seen you do that with almost I guess they were Doric columns, Ionic columns that you did.
Yeah.
I had seen a show of yours that
Right. Yes.
was
And
the great columns of Greece and Rome.
yeah, I like antiquity, and my wife's an art historian, so we travel a lot to a lot of places where the Romans were, from Spain all the way to Turkey, France, everywhere. And so I photograph a lot of antiquities, and I love Roman architecture, antique architecture, and so I try to simulate that as well. What was I saying? Oh yeah, so I started making these walls, and I even went to China in the early '80s when hardly anybody was going there. I photographed the Chinese walls. I even came out with a book called Great Walls of China, not the Great Wall of China, Great Walls of China. So I photographed walls and murals and billboards and signs and that kind of thing. And I incorporated some of that found imagery into some frescoes. And because besides photography, I was doing a lot of fresco painting, but dry fresco, which means painting into dry plaster, not wet plaster. But anyway, I applied for the Rome Prize, and I got the Rome Prize, which is quite a wonderful award for an artist. And so I spent a year in Italy, and I did tons and tons of frescoes. But what's different from mine, when you think of fresco painting, you think of Michelangelo and that era. But my frescoes were contemporary images.
Yes.
So most people don't see contemporary image frescoes. So that's what got me the Rome Prize, because it was a little bit of a different approach to a traditional Italian painting style. So then I work in series. I go usually from country to country. In other words, I'll go to a country, photograph a lot of different walls and street art and graffiti, and then I'll make a series of mixed media pieces inspired by that particular country. So I have China, I have Italy, I have Cuba, France, recently the UK, because I took some photos there last month, and Berlin. I even made realistic fragments of the Berlin Wall in 1986.
Oh, wow.
2 years before the Berlin Wall actually came down. And then I had a show of the Berlin Wall pieces in Soho in 1988. And it was a year and a half before the wall came down. And everybody that came into the show, and I was amazed myself, everyone would look at these big chunks, life-size pieces of what looked like the Berlin Wall, and they said, wow, I didn't know the Berlin Wall came down. I mean, they really thought they were real, which was a big compliment. But anyway, that gives you an idea of like what I've been doing over the years. But that's only a little piece of what I do.
Of course, I know that. And I believe, because you mentioned that you've traveled all over the world, I believe that the first time I actually saw your work, apart from the actual columns at one of the shows, but my daughter was young and she loved this photograph, and it was the pyramids in Egypt. And she was showing it to me, and we saw a name on it that this was the photographer. And so many years later, when I met you, you had been that photographer. This photograph that I assume you've had taken on your travels, and then I guess it was used in some sort of work. And my daughter was little, she loved it. And so that's how we actually found out your name first before we ever discovered your actual artwork in a gallery.
Well, that's a nice little story. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
You know,
And
it's one. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I said, so it's just, as I said earlier, how all things touch, because, you know, you do so much. I mean, you were even a musician, and you were in a pretty semi-well-known band. What was the name of the band? I mean, it was in the 80s, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, well, I mean, we were sort of known a little bit. We were called John Wayne. This is during the new wave period, right after punk. Then there was new wave.
Yes,
we were the new wave band. We played all over New York City from 1980 to about 84, just 2 or 3 gigs a week for years. And it was a crazy time, you know, putting up hundreds of posters on the street, wheat pasting them at 3 o'clock in the morning, you know, and then playing and then making hardly any money. We didn't really do it for the money. We just did it for the fun. Although after a while, it got to be a little bit too much, because I had a full-time art career going. And then now we're playing like we're full-time musicians, like you can't. Playing
at night, right? Nighttime venues.
Oh, yeah. And then, but practicing too. You have a lot of practice.
Yes.
Anyway, so, but it was really fun and exciting. And it's funny now, the lead singer in our band, we had 4 musicians. I was the drummer, and the PR guy, and the roadie, and I designed all the posters and everything. But the lead singer now ends up, he's a really world famous artist. He's not a household name, but he is well known in the art world. His name is William Pope, and he's shown in Whitney and MoMA, you name it, everywhere. And so,
and he was in the band with you. Yeah, I know, you know, because in the early 80s, I mean, I probably heard your band somewhere at one of those locations. Oh, yes, in Manhattan. You know, again, I say how the world touches. That's really why I wanted you on, because I was so thrilled about those pictographs that you did recently in London, which I do want to talk about that. But the whole entire idea of you documenting Hamilton, and I know Keith Haring has a little, it was a trio, but I used to sell vintage jewelry on 6th Avenue at 4th Street in the Village many years when I was young with a friend. And we actually met Jean-Michel Basquiat. And he was selling his wares next to us before he became famous. And so they were a trio of artists. And I know that Basquiat did a little bit more political and social commentary, as opposed to Haring that did, you know, the Haring did, to me, they are pictographs.
Yeah, and I knew Basquiat as well. In fact,
I knew you knew them, all of them.
This close to collaborating with him, and because this is the early 80s, mid 80s, I was collaborating with a lot of graffiti artists like Crash and Days and Tracy 168 and Vulcan and all Riff and all these guys. And Basquiat saw some paintings of mine in a little gallery, and he told the gallery owner that he liked my work. So he told me, you know, Basquiat was here the other day, and he told me he likes your work. So I said, oh, okay, well, that's really interesting. So I have a little bit of chutzpah. So I got his phone number, and I called him, and I said, you know, Jean-Michel, I've been collaborating with a lot of street artists and graffiti artists. Would you be interested in doing something on one of my simulated wall pieces? He goes, oh yeah, sure, bring it over. So I brought a piece over to his studio on Crosby Street, you know, and so. And he said, okay, leave it there, and I'll do something. I'll let you know. So about a month goes by. I didn't hear anything. And I thought, doesn't sound good that he hasn't called me. So I called him, and he says, Frank, come on over. I didn't do anything on your wall. Come on over. I have to talk to you. I said, oh, boy, that didn't sound good. So I went over there. Sure enough, he didn't touch the piece. And I said, what happened? He, at this time, this is like 1982, he was getting ready for his first solo show at Mary Bloom Gallery, which was a big deal. And so she kind of lectured him. She said, watch, Jean-Michel, you're not a graffiti artist anymore. You can't do any of that stuff. Okay. So he felt bad. So he actually commissioned me to do 2 small paintings.
Oh, how nice.
to make a long story short,
Yeah.
his studio is a mess. And
Right.
so I asked him, what do you want me to paint? And he bends over and he picks up 2 pieces of scrap paper off of his floor. And he says, here, paint these.
Oh my
One was
gosh.
like a parking stub and one
Yes.
toothpaste box.
Oh my gosh.
Do you want me to paint these? He says, yeah, how much you want? So this is all like coming at me quickly. I
Yeah.
I wasn't
Right.
expecting,
Long.
wasn't
Yeah.
expecting any of this. So I'm thinking, gosh, what should I charge? Meanwhile, while I'm thinking, the phone rings, and it's Andy Warhol.
Yes.
Who's his new best
Yes,
friend.
because he was starting there. Yeah.
So and Warhol wanted to go play racquetball, and Basquiat didn't feel like it. So while he's on the phone, I'm looking around the floor, and I found there were 2 checks I saw made out to Basquiat. One was $5,000. One was $8,000. Now this is 40 years ago. So
I know.
it was like 20,000, and 8,000
Yes.
was like 30,000. Just thrown in with garbage on the floor, the chicken bones and all. Anyway,
Yeah.
so I pick him up. He gets off the phone. I said, here, you might want these checks. He goes, oh, okay, thanks. He throws them on the table. So he says, okay, so what do you want for the 2 paintings? I said, I'm still thinking, I know he has money because I just saw it on the floor.
Right.
But I didn't want to be like a greedy artist. So I'm trying to come up with a kind of a compromised price. So while I'm thinking, he reaches behind a chair and he goes, here, you want this? And he hands me this piece of wood, and it was a Keith Haring paint.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a very good one. And remember, this is 40 years ago. Keith Haring is not the big deal.
Right. Yes.
Although I should have taken it, but I didn't. And Anyway, I told him, all right, give me $1,000 for 2 little paintings. They were only like this big. So remember, this is 40 years ago. So $1,000 was like $3,000.
Right.
And it only took me like maybe an hour to paint them. So he goes, okay. He reaches in his pocket and he pulls out 5 crisp $100 bills. He fans them out like, like playing cards. He goes, here's a deposit. When you finish, bring them and I'll pay you the rest. Okay. So I did. I went home, I painted them, I brought them back, and he paid me the rest. And that was it. He also gave me his autograph, which I recently sold for a nice little amount.
See, when we knew him, he was selling alongside of us on the street. He wasn't famous by no means. I think he was even living with somebody, or actually squatting with a number of people.
Oh, that's what he did. Yeah, he just went from house to house. Yeah. He was selling like
little postcards
and T-shirts,
writing on and like writing on checks on receipts.
Yeah, check
drawing pictures on receipts. Yeah. That's what he was doing in the beginning. But
that's how he met Warhol. He sold some of those postcards to Warhol.
Yes,
he liked them. Yeah.
Yes, and of course you mentioned Keith Haring. He's along the lines of pictographs as well. And because that's what I want to talk about, how you came to go to England, because of course you've taken that. I know they call it graffiti, but it really, as you said, it's the beginning of our ability to communicate. As opposed to other species on the planet, it's the communication. And so how did you go to England?
Right. It's modern cave paintings. It's really what it is.
Yes.
Well, I met an artist just online. Somebody recommended me for this virtual show, this fellow in London named Mark Craig. He was putting together a show of 50 artists, 25 Americans and 25 British artists, a virtual gallery of all kinds of work, but kind of related to street art. So I sent him some things, and he really liked my work. And he invited me over to paint a mural in London. He's sort of in charge of these. It's kind of an amazing place. It's called the Leek Street Arches, and it's an abandoned London a metro tunnel. And it's about 10 years ago, Banksy painted something on the walls, and then of course everybody joined in, and now it's like completely filled from top to bottom
of art
around the ceiling, just covered with. I mean, it's huge. It's like an airplane hangar,
Yeah, because it's a part of the underground. You're talking about but
it's street level
section at street level.
Okay. Yeah, you don't have to go down. It's street level, And so it's really accessible. In fact, now it's a big tourist attraction. I mean,
Yeah.
hundreds of people go there every day just
Mhm.
to look at the work. So anyway, I went there in October and I painted this mural, which I sent you. And it's again, it's homage to cave painters.
Yes.
And I use some like traditional cave imagery, and I even made like hand stencils, that they did, and I simulated their primitive spray paint, and it's about 15 feet by 15 feet. It's a pretty good size, and I did it with spray paint, which I normally don't use spray paint in my murals. I'm old school. I use paint and brushes. But I didn't have a lot of time, so I did it quickly with spray paint. And
how did that work? I mean, was that so difficult? Because I always looked at it and said, that looks so difficult to control the paint that way.
Actually,
how did you
I
find
really
it?
kind of liked painting with the spray paint because it was so fast, especially if the wall is very rough, which is the wall was kind of rough in this place. It's hard to paint with a brush because you can't get into the nooks and crannies, but spray paint goes everywhere. And you can make really nice flowing lines, and you can fill in big areas. And it doesn't cost much because the one can cover a lot of wall space. So anyway, it was very nice. And then I actually put up, while I was there, I figured I might as well have fun. It happened to be the 6th anniversary of Hamilton's death. So kind of as a little homage to him, I put up about 7 or 8 big life-size shadow photos from that Night series. And I wheat pasted them up. They're, about 6-7 feet. And it kind of was like I simulated the early 80s in Lower Manhattan.
Yes.
That kind of scary feeling because those shadows scared the heck out of everybody.
Yes, that's what I understand. And I think he started that, wasn't he doing first like outlines, almost like chalk outlines?
No, his first series when he first moved to New York in 79, I think, or 80, he put up, they were blueprint photographs of himself, kind of a picture of him with a suit and tie, and he just sort of staring at you, kind of like ominously staring at you. And he put hundreds of those up. And because they were on blueprint paper, they faded very quickly. And then they faded to white, pure white. And so you would see these white figures all over. And actually that's what gave him the idea to do the black shadows, because they were white, and then he figured, I'll go to black, do the opposite. And it was just a fluky thing too. I met Richard at a party in New Jersey, of all places. He had just moved to New York, and he actually told me what he was going to do with those shadows, which was surprising because he was very secretive. And I can understand why, because he wanted them to have great impact, and he was very strategic. He put these shadows in strategic places where people would turn a corner and then they would see a shadow. Would be there, it'd scare the heck out of you. He even told me they scared him because he would forget where he painted them, and he would see them, and so and then once you saw those shadows, you never ever forgot them. And
you wrote a book about this, right? You took what you documented and you wrote a book. What's the name of the book?
It's not a text written book. It was like a few pages. Just I told the story of what I'm telling you now, that I met him at a party. He told me what he was going to do, and I actually ended up being, and I didn't realize it, but luckily because I met him early and he told me what he was going to do, I had a head start. And I asked him, do you mind if I document your shadows? He said, no, go ahead, sure. So he would call me every couple of weeks to tell me where he did them, because I wanted to photograph them when they were
there, right up.
Black, pure black.
Yes.
Just unadulterated.
Not faded, you're right.
And if you see my book, I don't know if you ever saw my book on the shadows, but I laid it out so the first ones are the first ones that he painted. I put them in the book in order of how they were painted. So the first 20 or so, 30 are in beautiful black. And then, as time went by, people got into the act and they put, arrows through the head and antennas and tuxedos and all kinds of funny things. but and those are toward the end. And then toward the end, he got very animated. The shadows, instead of just being, standing, they were hands were thrown up and blasts of paint coming out of the brain, and it's just splashy and more animated. So I got a lot of those too.
And of course, they're universal symbols, right?
Yeah, everybody knows them now. Yeah,
petroglyphs, right? Because petroglyphs, they carve into the cave, and pictograph, they do the painting, and they really are all universal symbols to communicate with one another.
The human shape, the human form. That's everybody can relate to that, right? So it was a brilliant idea, and I knew it was. When he first told me what he was going to do, a little voice in the back of my head said, Frank, you should do something with this. Is sounds like such an important series. Right. And I was absolutely right, because 40 years later now, people are still talking about those shadows. My book is still selling.
Yes.
I've gotten into like museum shows I was in the first international graffiti show with those photographs at the LA MoCA about 10 years ago. And then just a couple of years ago, I was in the Saatchi Museum. It was just my photographs and Hamilton's paintings, it was a 2-man show at the Saatchi Museum. I mean, holy mackerel.
I'd like to put a link for that book, because I'm sure people are going to want to see it.
Yeah, it's called Nightlife, and it's all color. I have about 85 shadows in the book. It's a lot of, it's a lot. Because
it's a nice collection. It's a nice collection of his work that you did. I mean, because think about it. When you think about it, when I heard the story the first time, I mean, it was years ago, but you ran around with a camera. It was the time we had camera and film, right? You ran around with a camera to take
I used a real camera in those days, no cell phone cameras. But and actually, MoMA has one of the books in their collection, which is kind of nice.
Yes.
So,
and now, what are you working on now? I mean, you're always working on something. You actually also are an independent curator, and you curate in a lot of areas.
I've curated about 40 shows, believe it or not, over the last 40 years. Photography shows, sculpture shows, mixed media shows, in galleries and museums, outdoor sculpture shows, just about everywhere and anywhere. And it's a different challenge, and it's very gratifying, because in a way, a curator you're sort of curating a big art installation, but you're using other people's artwork.
Right.
The works that you relate to that maybe are similar to what you do, but they don't have to be.
Right.
But and so really, that's what you're doing. You're really using other people's art as your art, and you're making an installation and a statement, because
statement, or what you want to say.
It has a theme. But so that's I like to do a lot of different things.
But you work as an artist full time. You're a full time artist. That's your career.
Right. And if I'm not doing painting, I'm doing photography. If it's not photography, it's sculpture, or it's murals, or it's curating, or it's music. It's like, I don't know. I just can't help myself.
Well, you're always working, and that's like, art is so powerful. It's really visceral, isn't it? It's visceral. It makes a statement. And that's why we're here today, talking about making statements, how to communicating without words.
Yeah. And, it's amazing how like my murals have had effect on people. And I didn't realize this, but 2 people that I know in Poughkeepsie, they said they moved to Poughkeepsie because of my Main Street mural, which is a big mural right downtown Main Street. Because they were looking around Poughkeepsie, they were looking for a place to live. They were moving from New York, I think, and they saw my mural, and they said, "Wow, this is an amazing mural. It means that maybe there's something going on here, that people care about their community, or there's a community spirit, or there's creativity here. I think I'd like to move here." And they moved to Poughkeepsie because of my mural, which is like.
And we like the historical mural in Hyde Park.
Yeah, I did
a
that.
historical mural in Hyde Park, which is fabulous.
Thank you.
When you see FDR right there, you say, "Hey, this is really history happening here."
Yeah, most of my murals are history based, and they usually relate to the area where they appear. And because I go by the philosophy of FDR. FDR was my favorite president because he did so much for so many different kinds of people. It's just unbelievable how much he did. And he really, really paid attention to artists, and he, the WPA.
Yes, put them to work.
I think 15,000 murals were painted.
Yes.
I mean, that's amazing. So anyway, he had 3 rules with public art. He said it has to beautify the area, it has to reflect the local history, and it has to be informative and educational. So pretty much all my murals do that, and I think that's the best thing. And of all the things that I do, I think murals are the most gratifying because, like they have an effect on people. People move to Poughkeepsie because of my murals, but also the fact that they're out in the real world. It's not like you have a little painting in a museum or a photo in a gallery, which is nice. The show ends and that's it. But a mural is usually up for 25, 30 years. And everyone
who passes by sees it, right?
I mean, millions of people see your mural. I mean, what else could you ask for, And so, and it's part of the real world, and it has real effect on people, and it affects whole communities, not just like a few people here and there, whole communities.
No, exactly. Is another state, right? It's the power of art to make a statement, as you said, because it's in a gallery, people who frequent galleries will see what's there. But driving down the road, walking down the road with this tremendous mural, everyone gets a chance to view it and feel something from it. That's the important part, what it evokes.
Yeah, even years later, like 10, 15 years later, I'll bump into somebody who I just met. And then I mention, oh, yeah, I painted that mural a while ago. And he goes, and people say, you painted that mural? Yeah. Oh, I love that mural. I go by it every day to work. And every time I see it, it makes me feel good. I mean, that's the greatest feeling in the world. I mean, that my art is affecting people who I don't even know, and for years, like not just for 10 minutes.
Right.
It's
exactly.
Like, wow, it's really gratifying. Really is.
Oh, I would imagine so. And especially if it not only evokes emotions in individuals, because we know it does, but if because art has the power to heal, and how many people are healing from what they're seeing there out in the world, whether it's your murals, your photographs, or something that you've curated because you are always working.
Yeah, I mean, art makes you feel good. That's
right.
Yeah, not all art, but
no, but it always evokes some sort of emotion in an individual.
Yes.
What that may be, depends on the individual, but it does evoke something, and it's the power to feel, right? It's the power of an individual feel. Yeah,
it's communicating,
So now, what are you working on currently? Because I know you just had come back from England.
Yeah. And then about a year ago, I had a solo show in France. I took a lot of photos in Marseille, which is a really activated big city, and it had amazing walls. So I photographed a lot of walls in Marseille. So I'm kind of using those images in some new pieces. I just finished about 4 or 5 of them, small ones. And then I have a funny little show. It's a 3-day show at the Mohonk Mountain House.
Oh, okay.
I was invited to be part of this wine tasting event.
Oh,
and
nice.
Wines are Italian wines. So they were looking for an artist that had Italian images, and I have a million Italian images. And in fact, I'm showing the Polaroids that I showed at the Rhinebeck show that you saw.
Yes, which were wonderful. They were lovely. They were lovely, and I love the different sizes. I mean, we love the original, and then the hand painting, and then the different dimensions and what you see in those different dimensions.
Right. I'm going to show the original 3x3 inch hand colored Polaroids, and then I'm also showing the big 3x3 footers, which look like big paintings because the strokes that I put on the little tiny photograph, when they get blown up, they look like big brush strokes.
Yes.
So, because I'm a painter and a photographer, so I like to blend the two. And so these big Polaroids, they have both those qualities. And so anyway, that's in January 5th, 6th, and 7th. Anybody's welcome to come and look. There's the wine tasting in one room, and then I'm in another room with my artwork, all about Italy.
Now, do you have I know you have a website, which I'd like to list in the
Yes.
Description box. Do you have on your website like a listing, of a calendar of where you're going to be? I mean, I know not all the time do you know way in advance, but
it's not a calendar like by numbers, but I try to update, whatever show is happening. I have that on the homepage, the first thing you see. And then I have about, I don't know, 10 buttons, painting, photography, sculpture,
Right.
murals, this, and it's Polaroids and books. And so you just click on different things to see different aspects of what I do. And I even give a tour. If someone's interested, I give a 2-hour walking tour of public art in Poughkeepsie.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
And it includes it includes murals, sculpture, historical monuments, architecture, and history in general, and about the artists. It's a unique tour. It's the only one like it, I think, in the Hudson Valley, because it includes contemporary art and history and historical art all in one tour. And it's only like a 2 or 3 block area of downtown Poughkeepsie. There's 50 works of art in just 3 blocks of downtown Poughkeepsie.
And now, is that on your website too? Is that on your website?
Yeah, in fact, you can. There's a separate button for just the tour, and you can click and see a 5-minute little mini video of the tour. I only do those. I do them in the warm months, from April to October.
Right, of course, because we're in the Northeast. It's cold in the wintertime. But I do want to say that I'm privileged to have some of your artwork that I'm going to be showing, because this is a recording today. We're actually recording this. You're coming out. Actually, this is a special for the holidays, because it's related to, because of being, multidisciplinary artwork. It's a special. It's coming out for the holiday season. So I want, I know that I have this. Yes, that's what I want, and that's what I was leading up to. I want to show some real work of yours, just a smidgen, because you have. I'm going to be putting a little montage of some of the work from the pictures that you sent me, that people can see when they watch the actual air date.
This is a mixed media photo of the Berlin Wall. It had so many interesting painted areas, and in fact, you can see somebody did that little caveman kind of stencil, which I kind of liked. And,
which is
this is a painted color photograph, and I also sandpaper it. I actually sandpaper my photos, which most people say,
right.
But I like it because it actually adds a texture to my photos. Because, like I said, I like to have my photos look like paintings, and I like my paintings to look like photos. So,
now here's a quick question about photography, because of course, years ago when you started, you were using a regular camera with film, correct? Are you doing now digital?
Oh yeah, digital. Yeah, it's just so I fought it for a while, but then when I tried it, I said, boy, this is great. Well, why was I fighting this? It's so much easier than film.
And do you develop it yourself, or you send it out?
Well, I used to do that.
When it was the real film.
I don't do that anymore. I mean, I print my own prints, but I don't.
You print them, but right.
Yeah, there's nothing to develop anymore. It's all
now currently, no. And I think that if you want to get something, there's only 1 or 2 places that even do anything remotely like that. You have to search the whole country.
I'm not that old school kind of photographer. I don't miss it. I mean, I was doing it when I first started, but I don't miss it at all. I don't like being stuck in a dark room for hours and hours. I like to be out, traveling, taking photographs and seeing things.
Now, and you have a studio in New York that you work in.
Yeah, in Rhinebeck. Yeah, I'm in Rhinebeck.
Yes, and so you work in your studio, and then they can find all the information on your website, more or less.
Yeah, pretty much. Yep. My bio is there. And,
yes.
What
I
else?
will definitely list everything, but I want to thank you so much for coming today. I know it's only a small smidgen of talking about a fabulous body of work. I mean, I say to everybody, you're not in who's who in American art for no reason, because you are prolific and in all aspects of artwork. So
Yeah.
I really want to thank you for coming and speaking to the audience. As I said, this is a little special for the holiday, because sometimes we have.
I should have wore a Santa hat if I knew it
Santa
would
hat.
be the Christmas special.
Yeah, because I wanted to do a little special something a little bit on a lighter note that deals with art and the power of art in the world. And I said, who better to have on? And I want to thank you so much, because I know you're so busy. You're always
Well, thank you, Marissa. I appreciate it very much. Always nice talking about art, and just, in any place.
Right. And tell me again, when is you said the winery dates at Mohonk?
The Taste of Italy, it's called. It's at the Mohonk Mountain House, January 5th, 6th, and 7th.
Oh, I might have to run up there to see.
Yeah.
One
other quick thing. It's something a little different, even for me. I conceived and am producing a multimedia performance at the Trolley Barn in Poughkeepsie, February 2nd.
When's that?
Yeah, and it involves just 4 people, and it's an event. It's like a one-night event, and it includes photography, photography, music, dance, and lights.
Oh, wow!
It's called Shadow Dancing.
Oh, it sounds wonderful.
Are
there tickets for sale? Tickets for sale early? Because I'm sure
pretty soon. This it's happening February 2nd, so probably right after New Year's, you could probably buy a ticket. I think they're only $10, and I'm going to be showing. In fact, I'm showing some of my Hambleton shadow photos.
Oh, wonderful!
Like 5-6 footers.
Right. Oh, wonderful!
Yeah, because it's actually, this whole performance is inspired by my Hambleton shadow photos.
Oh, that's great. Oh, I definitely have to come out there too. But again, I want to thank you so much for taking the time today to speak to the audience. I want to wish you a wonderful holiday.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. And hopefully I'll see you out there soon. Come and see some more of your work.
Yeah, well, I hope to see you at one of my events coming up.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I'll come out with my family. Thank you so much, Frank.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a great afternoon. Thank you again.
You too. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.